I decided to do an introduction tonight, and the title of the introduction is True Love, the Gift of Life. So we're going to talk a little bit about love and about life and how the two go together. Recently we started reading again from the beginning of the Torah, from Parashat Bereshit, Sefer Bereshit, the very beginning of creation, which the Torah reveals to us that part of the mission of mankind, and the animal kingdom is to procreate and to multiply. In the very, very beginning, there is no Jewish nation. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God, is speaking to the entire world, to all of humanity. And what does He say? Pru urvu umil'ut haaretz v'chivshuha. Procreate, multiply, and settle the land. Now, what's interesting about creation is, even if you were a die-hard evolutionist, you have to admit, if you're honest, that it is an incredible miracle of sorts that this creation, regardless of how it came about, has the ability to reproduce itself. And it's one thing to say that things came about by themselves, somehow by chance, Big Bang. Fine. But that this Big Bang should repeat itself, that all of creation, everything in creation, from the smallest insect to the largest animal, they all have the ability to reproduce. They all have the ability to copy themselves. And obviously, what does this tell us? That the one who designed the world, the one who created the world, which is what we believe, allowed for this to continue, for the human species, for the animal species to survive. Without that, it would not be possible. So He embedded in creation, in every living thing, the ability not only to live, not only to be born, but after the first creation, the ability to recreate itself. Besides this great ability that human beings have and that animals have, the Torah also elevates human life. The Torah tells us how life is important. Human life, animal life, they're all important. But when it comes to human life, the Torah tells us, Ki b'tzelem Elokim bara et ha'adam, that God created man in the image of God. Not that God has any image, but tzelem Elokim means that He endowed him with a soul. He endowed him with a soul, with a living soul, and imparted him with the ability to exercise free will. The human being is very precious. He is the crown of creation, meaning that he's the most important part of creation. He has been given control over everything, almost over everything. And because of that, the Torah is very, very strict about human life. Don't shed blood. We're talking about every human being. Makes no difference, the race and the color. Ki b'tzelem Elokim, we're talking about the image of God over here. We're talking about the importance of the human being. Now, even though life is important, as I just finished saying, the human being is the most important of all. Human being is also very different than everything else, because everything else functions by instinct, which is very mechanical in nature, instinct, as opposed to the human being who, even though he has instincts, he has the ability to control them. He has the ability to direct them properly. And this is a very important difference, as you will soon see, when we talk about certain behaviors amongst human beings. In other words, if we say it's all instinct, and people are not responsible for their behaviors, obviously, you can understand what that leads to. But the moment we say that human beings have the ability to exercise free will, are endowed with a certain degree of intelligence, they have a soul, and they're able to control themselves, so even though they may have similar animal instincts, it doesn't mean that they have to behave like animals. So that's a very important distinction. The Kabbalah is very clear about the fact that when God created man, He also put into his subconscious mind the knowledge of the bare necessity, the minimum that he needs to know, the ability to distinguish between certain things that are right and others that are wrong. Without commandments, without a manual of instruction, just basically, as we were calling it, subconscious mind, he is able to distinguish between right and wrong. If he is put in an island and he does not go to school, hopefully he will know not to kill, not to steal, not to do certain things that are not acceptable. No religion, no instructions. We're talking about the subconscious mind. Hashem embedded it into the human mind through the neshama. And this neshama, by being a divine part of God, right? It's a halek eloka mimal. It is able to express those ideals. It is able to distinguish. The animal in us does not. So it is through that neshama, if we listen to it, we're able to know certain things. Not everything. We need guidance, but the basics we're able to know. Once we know that, we go on to another parasha in the Sefer Bereshit, and we come across not only murder, not only thievery, we come across an episode that is called and is known even by the non-Jewish world as the episode of Er ve'onan. Er ve'onan did not want Tamar, their wife, to become pregnant, and therefore they threw their seed away. As it is known in Jewish literature, Zera levatala. Zera levatala, throwing one's seed away, is a very serious sin. Unfortunately, not too many people speak about it, but a lot has been written about it. The Zohar tells us how serious it is. And it's something that parents have to be aware of when children grow up and are not taught or not directed as to how to handle this stage in life, that it is very important that they be very careful not to throw away that seed of life, of potential life. And especially growing up in a promiscuous society, exposed to all sorts of images and lifestyles, it becomes a greater challenge for the teenage boy or for the single man who's no longer a teenager but he's still single, to be able to preserve the sanctity of life, which is what the seed is. This is something, again, that not everybody speaks about. Some people think it's something that's too difficult to talk about, but it's something that needs to be said because it is very, very serious. After all, when we first face, at the first time in our history, in the Torah, the Humrah of this Avon, the series of this Avon, is in the episode of Er ve'onan. What happened to Er ve'onan? They died at a very early age because they did not want Tamar to become pregnant for whatever reason, and they threw away their seed. And there's different ways of throwing away a seed. And I don't have to get into the details of that. I think most of you, or at least some of you, understand that there are different ways to accomplish that. For a man, it's always a sur. I'll briefly talk about contraceptives, briefly, as it relates to married couples and women. But for the man needs to know that for him to do anything with the seed is completely prohibited. There's no way out of it. He cannot do anything to his body physically, nor can he do anything to the seed. This is a very serious offense that is not elaborated too much in schools, unfortunately, but it's still a responsibility of parents and of those of you who are aware to make sure that everybody know about it. The next area, which is unfortunately not very well observed by certain people, certain women, is hapala. Hapala in English is translated as an abortion. Certain women think that it's within their right, because it's their body, to do as they please, as they wish with that fetus. But again, we're talking about a potential life. It's no longer a seed. It's even more than that. Depending at what stage of pregnancy the woman is in, it has developed. And to throw away that is almost equivalent to murder. I say almost because obviously there is some difference between the murder of a real human being and the murder of a fetus. Right? There is some difference. Of course it's serious, but there is definitely a difference. There's no death penalty in court down here, right, for the killing of a fetus. There is for the killing of a human being. I mean, there is some difference, but nevertheless, it's a very serious offense. What about contraceptives then? What it means is holding it back altogether. All I will say for now, because that's not the topic of tonight, is that anybody considering contraceptives has to consult with a rabbi. In other words, there are certain things a woman, not a man, a woman can do to prevent pregnancy, but it has to be done in consultation with a rabbi so as not to commit a sin. Very simple. One should not take it upon himself to decide when and how without the consultation of a rabbi. But when it comes to doing something to the physical body, the women are also prohibited from what's called in English tying the tubes. Okay? So when it comes to touching the physical body, that is a whole different story. Nobody is allowed to do anything to prevent pregnancy by messing with the body. The next area, which is a very, very problematic, is homosexuality. And I'm going to spend a few more minutes about that because this is another one of those topics that you will rarely hear Orthodox rabbis speaking about. Yeah. And then obviously, somehow the Satan tried to bring them down here tonight, just as I'm talking about this topic. Apparently, there is no coincidence, apparently. But the Jewish voice has to be heard, the Torah's voice has to be heard. People have to become knowledgeable about what the issues are. What are the issues? What does mishkav zachar mean? In other words, when two men or two women, pretty much, even though it's a little bit different, nevertheless, are involved in a relationship which is not kosher. Let's just call it not kosher. What's wrong with it? We're not talking about love right now, because love is beautiful. Love is something which is very strong. Love is a bond between two people. That could be between two men and two women. That's fine. So what's going on over here? Well, let's turn to the Torah. Remember, we're talking about the topic of tonight, for those of you who came a little late, is an introduction to next week. We're talking about true love, the gift of life. And what happens when two men are together? The Torah says to'eva. To'eva means it's an abomination. What's an abomination? It's disgusting. It's unacceptable. Okay? That's all it means. But the rabbis tell us the word to'eva also means to'eba. In the word to'eva, you actually have an explanation of why it's unacceptable. Now, I was very careful to use the word unacceptable and not to say unnatural. Because it is natural. And I may have surprised some of you. It's natural? Yeah. And I'll get to that in a moment. So I'm being very careful in saying it's unacceptable. according to Torah standards. So the rabbis tell us why. Well, look at the word to'eva. It has the message in it. To'eva means to'eba. The male is making a mistake by thinking that this is the correct or acceptable way to express his love. His love. We're talking about love right now. Why? Why is he making a mistake? Because true love is spiritual in nature. It is a spiritual bond between two individuals. However, the human being is also physical in nature, right? We're also physical. And it is the nature of that which is physical to want to feel something, to want to hold on to something, to hug something, to kiss somebody, obviously, right? That is the nature of that which is physical, because the physical wants to enjoy, wants to have the pleasure. That's the nature of physical. So there is a bond. There's a bond between two individuals spiritually. There should be. And there can be a bond, a physical bond too. After all, intimacy involves both things, not one without the other. A spiritual bond without the physical is very nice, but it's also incomplete. And it cannot and it should not be between husband and wife. A husband and wife relationship needs to be both spiritual and physical for it to be complete. But if it's only physical and not spiritual, it's passion. The physical wants to connect on a physical level. It wants to enjoy the physical contact. Is that love? No, that's not the true expression of love. That's just a physical bond of wanting to enjoy each other. That's all it is. Whereas true love is a spiritual bond between two individuals. And it can be also expressed by the proximity, the closeness of the physical bodies too. A display of that affection. But that's all it is. It's a display. It's not the real thing. And of course, people get mixed up because of that, especially in the Hollywood movies, when all you see is all that passion, but that's not true love. True love is lasting, whereas physical love is like food. The body needs food. It satiates itself, right? And then it's, Baruch Hashem, not hungry anymore. It needed that food and the drink. And it will need it the next day too. Same thing with physical love. The physical love wants to have that physical connection, but a couple minutes later, it's satisfied. I don't know too many people who are kissing a whole day, from the morning to the evening, right? A kiss, a hug, and you're happy. You know, some people need it more, some people need it less, because it's also emotional. But once those feelings of emotion, once those physical feelings are satisfied, that craving is gone, at least for the moment. And that in itself should prove and remind you that it's not the real thing. If it was the real thing, I should want to have it all the time. What do we have, or what can we have all the time, is a spiritual bond between people. That all the time where you want to give to the other person, where you care about them, where you're thinking about them all the time. That is beautiful. That is the real thing. So because we are, part of us is spiritual and part of us is physical, we can have both. But we should not make the mistake of emphasizing that which is physical, because that is not the real thing. And since it's not the real thing, people make the mistake. It's very easy to make the mistake that this is important, that this is okay, that this is acceptable. After all, it's so natural. Yes, it is very natural. It is very natural for every human being, for every man and woman, to want or to be attracted to the same sex. It's natural. It's not rare. No, to the same. And I'll explain why. Not to the opposite, to the same. And I'll tell you why. Listen carefully. It sounds a little bit surprising. It's completely natural. But, hopefully, Be'ezrat Hashem, God willing, it will not be directed there. Not the physical. It will be directed where Hashem wanted it. Hashem, in His design, directed that the male should be attracted to the female. For what purpose? Very simple. If there would be no attraction, there would be no procreation. People would have no interest in that. Hashem therefore embedded a chip, let's call it a chip, in the male and in the female, that they should want each other for the purpose of procreation. We're here trying to perpetuate the species, the human race. There needs to be therefore that attraction, there needs to be that ability to reproduce, and that's there from day one. But the instinct of being attracted flesh to flesh exists even in the same sex, to a degree. Most of the time, it's not overemphasized. Most of the time, it's not on our mind. Most of the time, it's not developed, because what does develop is what is intended to develop for its ultimate tachlit, male to female, not male to male and female to female. When does male to male develop? Not in a natural way, even though it's unacceptable. When does it really develop? Under certain circumstances. And I'm not going to go into that now because we're not studying psychology of this kind of a behavior right now. But one of them is in a prison cell, in jail, when you stick all these men together and there are no women there. Yes, I think I just said something that may sound a little bit strange to some of you, but it's very well documented, right? That under certain circumstances, in certain situations, what all those circumstances are, I don't think anybody can claim they know. Nobody can claim they know all the circumstances of what allowed this man, this male, to develop that instinct that exists in everybody, and not just to go by the instinct that is embedded in him too, to be attracted to the opposite sex. Why? It's not important. What's important to know is to'eba. He's making a mistake if he's allowing himself to continue there. Hopefully, people who are raised in a healthy environment with no special circumstances will hopefully do what the majority of the world does, is be attracted to the other sex, not to the same one. Now, there's always going to be some attraction between two men and two women. They're going to be good friends, close friends. There's going to be some physical contact, but there can't be too much intimacy physically because it's not intended for procreation. So again, we're going back to the word I said before. The Torah therefore says, male with male, to'eva, meaning to'eba. You're being mistaken in expressing your love to that degree. That's not intended here. That's not meant to be. It's unacceptable. You're making a mistake. If it is the love that you're seeking, true love is spiritual, not physical. This is more an outlet for you. This is more something that will pass once you're satisfied. This is not the real thing. You're connected, you feel bonded, you feel that it's good, it's pleasurable. That's because it's the flesh. But you are also something spiritual. You have a neshama. And you can bond with someone on a spiritual level, which is a much more powerful bond than the physical. That is true love. So yes, it is natural, completely natural, but you shouldn't allow it. The Torah says, to'eva. But again, it can happen. Then will come the smart Alex. Smart Alex will claim, wait a minute. And that's why I was careful to say that it's natural. It even exists by animals. Animals have been found, and I can list you a whole list of animals that have been found to engage in this kind of activity, male-male. What is that? Well, that's why I told you before, it's natural. I didn't want to be caught by saying, oh, you see it's natural? No, I admit it's natural. I just said it's unacceptable. What's the difference between animals and human beings? Several things. First of all, number one, nobody should ever claim that because it exists amongst animals, that it should exist also by human beings. Because first of all, I don't think anybody can claim he understands perfectly animal behavior. As much as we have experts on animals, nobody can claim they understand the behavior of certain monkeys, for example, when they lick each other. What does the licking do? What does that mean when they lick each other? Licking could be bonding of it could be male to male. It's a form of bonding, of staying together. Do we know the language of monkeys? I mean, I don't think anybody can claim they understand fully the behavior of animals. So that's number one. Number two, animals have instincts. And human beings, even though they have instincts, they also have da'at. They have intelligence. They have that neshama. They have that free will. They have the ability to reason. Wait a minute. Yes, I know. This sounds good. This looks good. But it's not acceptable. It's not right. Animals don't have that. And then there's number three, which we just recently read. In Parshat Noach, what happened to the animals? Why were the animals destroyed? The human beings were destroyed by the flood, I know. But why were the animals destroyed? Kishhit kol basar darko. It says all living beings corrupted their ways. Even the animals, yes. When human beings corrupt their ways, animals will also. So when we see something strange, a tiger mating with a lion, crossbreeding, that is not completely natural. Even though it can happen, it has been done with human intervention, and it has produced some sort of crossbreed, which by the way cannot reproduce. So even though we may see this, wow, that's strange, a dog and a cat. I mean, they're always enemies. And all of a sudden they're together in a very unconventional way. What's that? Kishhit kol basar darko. That is an indication that human beings are conducting themselves like that, and that affects, on a spiritual level, human beings are so powerful. They control the world. The Zohar says, the Kabbalah explains, they control the spiritual worlds. What we do here affects everything. We don't see it, but it actually, on some level, it's in the air. It does something to the animals too, somehow. So when we're seeing this very strange behavior by animals, let's not just say, well, if they do it, I can do it. No. It's because you are doing it, that's why they have corrupted their ways. So that's just another way of looking at it. Lately, in the past generation or so, we've been witnessing many diseases that have come about as a result of man-to-man connection. And obviously, a disease, according to the Kabbalah, very clearly indicates that this behavior is unacceptable mishamayim. Now that we understand a little bit the isurim, the prohibitions against this kind of behavior, now let's talk a little bit about children, which is the topic of next week. But today is more of an introduction. We spoke a little bit about the importance of preserving the zera, the seed, not aborting the fetus, right? Not engaging in behavior which is contrary to what the Torah says. After all, the goal is marriage, because the goal is procreation. Now, what are children? Number one, a child is a continuation to the father and the mother. As the Zohar says, after the parents depart from this world, they are their ambassador. The children are the continuation of the parents. Very nice, very important. Number two, when a child comes into the world, believe it or not, it has the effect, it's supposed to have the effect of making the bond between the father and the mother even stronger. Husband and wife who were not getting along, but now they have a child, hopefully that child should bring them even closer. And number three, which is more the topic of tonight, the greatest act of love is the giving of life to someone. So a child is an act of love. That is true love. What has happened to our generation that is so different from the past? Where people today, some prefer a dog over a child. They even dress them up. with a sweater, shampoo them, serve them steak. I mean, anything you can think of. What's happened over here? They never had this before. It's not only that. This is a generation that is full of divorces. Something is breaking down here. You know what's happening? This is a generation that does not have the tools to be a true father and a mother. This is a generation that does not have the tools to be a good husband and a good wife. And it does not therefore surprise me when I hear in the news another baby was found in the toilet of McDonald's. This is a day ago. A baby was found in the toilet in McDonald's. A baby was found in a trash can. A baby was found abandoned. Does that surprise you? I mean, I'm sure it always happened, even in the past, but now more than ever. People are sick. The relationship is sick. People are not thinking of the same ideas as previous generations. And so we want to figure out why. Let's try to figure out what's missing. You want to know what's missing? The third partner is missing. The rabbis tell us in Masechet Nida that in the creation of a child, there are three partners. The father and the mother, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The father and the mother each one gives part of the physical form of this child, and Hashem gives the soul plus the five senses. When the human being leaves this world, Hashem says, I leave the part of the parents in the grave, and I take my part. But there are three partners. And just like there are three partners in the creation of man, the Rabbi tells there also should be three partners in the formation of a home, of a Jewish home, in a marriage. If you bring in the third partner, the Shekhinah, into your home, there's a better chance that that home will last forever. What has happened in this generation? They've thrown this third partner out. It used to be that even non-Jews believed in something called religious morality. But once you introduce science and you threw out religious morality and that God is not part of the formula, when you confront a woman who wants to abort her fetus, how are you going to convince her that it's wrong? What are you going to do? There's no way you can win an argument, really, no matter how smart you really are, if you leave out the third partner. If you throw out God, you can't win an argument with a homosexual either. What's wrong? Why not? Once you throw out the third partner, it's very difficult to convince. Why can't they do what they want? Why can't they do what they want with their body? It's their body. They're not accountable for it. There's no din, there's no dayan, there's no cheshbon, there's no gehenom, there's no nothing. Why not? Because it's unacceptable? What do you mean unacceptable? The Greeks did it, the Romans did it, the Arabs do it. Everybody, a lot of people do it. Okay? So what's wrong? How are you going to convince it? Well, it's not the norm. Oh, so what? Just for the fun of it. Have a wife and have a boyfriend too. After all, there are some people who have both. How are you going to convince him? If you throw out the third partner, you're going to lose the argument. You're going to have a hard time convincing. And that's what has happened to marriages who have thrown out the third partner. If you don't listen to the boss, you're only listening to yourself, to what you want, and that's what's more important is what you want, not what he wants, then obviously you're going to sooner or later get into a big fight. But if the two couples are interested in not doing what each one wants, but what he wants, that's a whole different story. That has a better chance that's the recipe for success, of following what Hashem wants, following what the Torah expects of us. So they threw out the partner. Had people preserved the sanctity of the marriage the way it was, had people looked at life the way they have in the past, that life is precious, that life has meaning, obviously they would be more careful not to throw away their seed, not to abort a child. They would want to get married and settle down. Because what is marriage? Marriage ultimately enables us to procreate, enables us to comply with God's wishes of settling the world, of continuing the human race. But if people do not believe in all that, then obviously it's such a burden, it's such a bother. I have to feed another mouth. I'd rather have a dog who doesn't complain so much, right? It's easy to take care of, relatively. It's the concepts, it's the education, the philosophy that has changed so much. Children in themselves, besides being so beautiful and so cute when they're born, besides giving us, B'ezrat Hashem, much nachat, happiness in the future, what are children all about? Lashon HaKodesh, the Hebrew language, allows us to understand in a deeper way what the function of the boy and the girl are. The word ben, son, is from the same root binyan, to build, to construct. So when you're bringing a boy into the world, you're actually building this world. And you're also building him, if you're taking care of him properly as a father. So ben, from the root livnot, binyan, that's what you're accomplishing. What about a girl? About a daughter? What does anybody can guess what that comes from? Bait. Akeret habayit. Right? The woman is the housewife. She's the one that takes care of the home. She's the one that raises the children. That is her function. Men and women, they all have different functions. The man builds. The man initiates. He does certain things. He goes out, develops. The woman takes care of the home, builds the home, forms the home. You need to work together to accomplish whatever it is you need to accomplish. You can't do everything on your own. A man cannot stay single by himself and do everything. Hashem therefore puts them together, each one with their strength, with their abilities, to accomplish whatever it is that they need to accomplish. And one of those things is to bring children into the world. That can only happen through a man and a woman, male and female, not through two men. But if you remove that third partner, then that's okay, we'll just adopt a child. Right? Of course you can adopt children. That's also a beautiful mitzvah. But ultimately we see it in the nature that Hashem has embedded, that the man and the woman, when they come together, have that ability to reproduce themselves. That was part of the design from day one. That is natural, that is acceptable, and that is desirable. Everything else goes contrary to that plan, and if it's contrary, then it's unacceptable. Is it natural? Of course it can be natural. It can happen. We have instincts. We have an evil inclination that wants us to be jealous, wants us to take that which is not ours. Is that acceptable? Also not. Then why should this be more acceptable? There are certain things that are not acceptable. Without the Torah, we would not know. Without the third partner telling us, we would not know. So when you throw out the third partner, that's the kind of world you get. People underestimate sometimes what can come out of one child. One of the most funniest stories being told in Israel today in forums that talk about abortions is about General Raful. For those of you who remember him, one of the generals in Israel, famous general, Raful. His parents, when the mother was pregnant, considered making an abortion. They couldn't afford it. They really couldn't afford it. But because it cost a few lirot, then it was lirot, to make the abortion, they did not even have the 3 lirot, whatever it was, to pay the doctor. The mother said, just forget it. Just forget about it. And look at this child, what he turned out to be. Use this just as an example, but out of the same child could have been a great rabbi too. What can come out of a child? Incredible. You never know. And that is what Shlomo HaMelech tells us. Even if you were married when you were young and you had children with your first wife, in your later years, if you marry again, have children again. Have children even in your later years, even if you had them earlier on, because you do not know which of the two will be better. How does one know? Who will be stronger, who you will be happier with, who will give you the most nachat? You don't know, so you keep on going. And therefore in Jewish philosophy, we don't limit. Only 3, only 4.5, right? We don't believe in numbers. We fulfill the mitzvah as it comes. Every child is a gift. And that's the way we look at it. We don't say, oh, another child is coming to the world. It's a whole different philosophy, it's a whole different attitude if we understand what the value of life is. There is a very interesting mitzvah in Judaism called Yibum. Some of you may not have heard of it, but Yibum only exists in Judaism. Let's say Shimon passes away from this world without kids. He was married to Leah. Okay, it happens, of course, that people become, women become widows. Now what? There's a mitzvah for the brothers of Shimon, Reuven, Levi, Yehuda, to make Yibum to this wife called Leah, in other words, to marry her. The child that will be born, Bezrat Hashem, out of this union, will be, as the Zohar says, a Gilgul, a reincarnation of the soul of Shimon who departed this world. By making the Yibum, you're able to hakim et habayit shel Shimon. You're able to reestablish that home that unfortunately collapsed too soon. Well, obviously, Leah needs to agree that she likes the brother. The brothers need to agree that to marry this girl, this woman. Today it's a problem if the brothers are married because you cannot have more than one wife at a time. But in the days when you were allowed to have more than one, it was not a problem. But you still had to want. What if one of them does not want? There's something called chalitza. Before the woman can marry somebody else, a stranger, she has to be released from this connection that exists over there. There's a whole procedure on how to do this chalitza, and most of the time today, in our times, chalitza is done. Yibum is obviously very special, if it would be possible, because it allows for this home that fell apart to be rebuilt. The reason I shared with you this idea is because you can see from Yibum, from the whole mitzvah of Yibum, how the Torah is so concerned about building, about giving a name to this man who left this world, to the child that will be born. And in Judaism, we give names after those who have departed. It is important to them because it is as though they continue to exist amongst us. It's somehow, on a spiritual level, it gives them some pleasure. Just like to end with a very important mitzvah, and that is the mitzvah of Seudat Hodaya, giving thanks to the Almighty when you have a child. Now, for many, when they have a male boy, it's easy for them to make this meal because there's going to be hopefully a Brit Milah, a circumcision. And that's when they do the Seudat Hodaya, in thanking the Almighty. Because what do we do when we thank Him? We say we don't take it for granted. There are some people who do not have kids. But the point here is not just the importance of giving thanks, is that even if it's a girl, don't be stingy. And don't say, oh, well, it's not a boy, forget about it. Right? Some husbands of certain communities, and I won't mention which communities they are, as soon as they hear the girl, they don't want to come visit their wife. You mean she had a girl? They hang up the phone. I'm serious about it. It's not right. It's not nice. This girl, Bezrat Hashem, will be a mother one day. She will have children of her own. Be thankful, Baruch Hashem, that you have a child that is healthy, that is beautiful. Bezrat Hashem. I mean, we need both. We need boys and girls. Right? So, it's not a matter of that one is more important than the other. They're both special. So therefore, give thanks to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, even for a girl. For both. And the reason I emphasize this is because just remember, there are some people who have no kids. So if you have it, be thankful, be grateful about it. Don't think it's just natural. Okay, it's coming to you. No, who said it's coming to you? If you have it, be thankful. But as we will see next week, Bezrat Hashem, being thankful is not enough. We have to take care of the kids properly too. You have been given a pikadon. A pikadon means something that was entrusted to you to watch over. Children means a lot of responsibilities. And it's not easy raising children, especially in our generation. But just because it's not easy doesn't mean that you should stay away from it, shy away from it, and not want to have them. Because ultimately, we should never have to come onto kids when we are older. But we take care of them when they're young, and they may take care of us when we are older too. I'm not wishing it to anybody, because it's a very uncomfortable feeling if you have to come into your older age, have to come into a child. But that's sometimes the way things work out. That's part of the kibud av va'em that the children need to give to their parents to pay back to them. But just as important as the kibud av va'em is, let's not forget that we also owe a lot of thanks to the third partner, who is the father of all of us, in allowing this to happen. Without him, it cannot happen. And B'ezrat Hashem, next week, I will attempt to explain why is it that some couples don't have that fortune of having kids. What's the explanation for that, as much as we know? So B'ezrat Hashem, we'll cover that next week. Thank you.